I love my father, and I have a relationship with him, and I hug and kiss my father still to this day, but there was this inherent sort of aggression and violence that existed and it could just come out like that. And so, by show of hands, how many at this table have been afraid of their father?
You know, there were some times I was definitely afraid of my father. There were some times we beat the shit out of each other, for sure. I was being an idiot, he didn't know how to deal with it, and then it just resulted in altercations every once in a while. It wasn't anything like super dramatic. It was like, you know, 1 or 2 hits, then we'd be like, all right, we're idiots, like, let's stop this. And my mother would just be in the corner like, oh my God, like, what the hell? And then that would be it, you know.
I remember one time my father beat the shit out of me, and I was watering the lawn, and I guess he felt like I was using too much water. And he went to hit me, and I ran. And then he chased me, and he got angrier and angrier and angrier. And then when he finally caught me, he really beat me up really badly. But that's the only time that ever happened. I don't know that I was afraid of him per se. I just didn't have much of a relationship with him, one way or the other.
My dad, you know, was violent with my mom, but he was never with me. And so it wasn't what I know some guys have gone through. I feared him, but the scarier part for me, I guess, was seeing some of that in myself and the times where I would snap. It's scary, like knowing like that guy is in there. Yeah.
The older I get and the more I hang out with guys who are healthy, you're like, oh man, I'm deficient. Like, I'm missing something. There's something broken in me, even though you know, I can be a reasonable person and everything, but there's something broken in me because we had to deal with those kind of situations when we were 3 and 4. Totally. Yeah.
Well, he passed away about a year ago. He had brain cancer, so his mind started to go, so I would get frustrated with him not remembering or not walking, and I didn't deal with it in ways that I should have, and I learned that from him. And, you know, when he was still kind of in it, he'd be like, is this payback? Is this revenge? And you know, he would just say that, and I'd be like, no, it's not revenge. You know, it's just, I don't know how to deal with things because I watched how you dealt with things.
My experience with my dad was quite different. Thinking about him growing up, he's very quiet. I can't remember one time that I really saw him upset. I definitely can't remember any time I saw him yelling. And I can't, like, I guess when I was younger, I would have issues with that because it was so different for what I thought being a man was. And now I'm kind of like realizing who my dad is and all of the value and solidness that he brought to our household by, you know, kind of being who he was.
My dad, obviously a military guy, but a very affectionate man. We hug, we kiss each other, you know, we say, I love you. And it's been that way forever. So I don't know, you know, what you've gone through. You know, I can understand and I get upset by hearing it. I have 2 boys, 11 and 14. And the question is, how do you raise them? As I coach Little League, and I'm watching Little League World Series, and I watch a kid hit another kid with the ball. And the first thing that pitcher does is he goes over and shakes his hand and says, I'm sorry. Yeah. Back in the day, that never would have happened. You know, you'd go up there and the next team's up there and you throw the ball at them.
Yeah, no,
totally.
Right? What we can do as men is to try to break those cycles.
How about you, Kevin? I mean, what was your experience like?
It's funny because my dad I grew up in a Latin family, so my dad was definitely the one with the belt. So I guess as a little kid I was scared, but I always felt like my dad was a really loving, warming dad when he was around, and I would never do that to my kid. I think this is just sort of the way he was taught, and that's the only way he knew how to discipline. And I'm a little more educated, and I think I can figure that out. So no, I thought my dad was always a pretty decent guy.
I grew up in a broken home. My father was not a great role model. He was not a great provider. He was misogynist. And so for me, I always grew up sort of a little bit distant from my father. And as I got older, that's when I was able to look back and to begin to realize, you know, what would have happened if I had those further conversations with my father, if I could take the good portions of what he was providing me in life and actually build that. I didn't quite realize how I was being framed from my mother's perspective, which, you know, with me in terms of parenting, I think we get a little bit too hung up in general about what our parents should have done, could have done, would have done. Just, they did the best that they could and move forward.
I was even worse than him in one way, because I wound up fathering a kid who I never got to even know. I met the kid twice when he was still an infant. I never saw him again. I don't know why I was such a bad father. I mean, the worst possible father. Maybe I don't want to blame my father for that, and it would probably be a stretch to do that. I have to take responsibility myself.
Oh man, if I had a son, I would really try to not f them up. You know, and I'm trying to mellow myself out and deal with the same issues. I would hope that by the time that happens, I'm to a point where he doesn't have that influence. He knows, you know, my father's not this way, I shouldn't be this way. Let's use our minds, let's work together, let's figure this out in a way that's good for both of us and not beat the hell out of each other.
I mean, I have always been an incredibly sensitive kid, and I think that so much of my experience with my father kind of, in some ways, prepared me for real life. I needed somebody that, for better or for worse, was toughening me up. You know, when I came out to him, he literally said to me, there's a part of me that wishes I could take something and not wake up tomorrow. And I remember just getting up and be like, well, this went well. I'm gonna go. And
find you something.
The craziest thing was that then, right afterwards, he looked at me and he said, you're not gonna give me a hug goodbye?
Wow.
And I realized there's so many times in life that we want to make it about ourselves, but that comment was not actually about me. It was about he felt guilt. And for a week afterwards, we were speaking on the phone and he was like, I just feel so guilty. I just feel so, and I was like, Dad, this is not something A, that I'm ashamed of, or B, that you caused because you were working as a child. In fact, when people ask me who my hero is, I tell them my dad. He might not agree with who I am, or that might be hard for him, but anytime anybody brings up gay marriage, he's like, oh yes, I support that. And I'm like, who are you? But you know, people change, they just have to be ready for it, and sometimes they're quieter about it than they might let on. Sometimes change is kind of quietly roars.
SoulPancake, subscribe!